Whilst driving through Wagga Wagga in New South Wales, Australia, we came across this museum of old warplanes, and I thought, well, there may be some people interested in these old planes, so we stopped and took a few photos and recorded some of the details that they had on site. This is the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation Windjiel, designed and built in Australia by Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation at Fisherman's Bend near Melbourne. Took to the air for the first time on the 3rd of February 1951. 64 Windjiels were produced, including 2 pre-production prototypes. It commenced productive service with the Royal Australian Air Force in 55 as a basic trainer aircraft, and mostly allocated to No. 1 Flying Training School at Point Cook. The training Windjiels were retired back in the 1970s, but they continued to serve with No. 4 flight to later be absorbed in the 76 Squadron, and were still in service until 1995. After that they went to the museum. Armament is smoke markers. Maximum speed 186 mile an hour. Ceiling is 15,800 feet. Here we have the Meteor Mark 8 aircraft. Served in the Korean War in 1950 to 1953. The Gloucester Meteor was the first Allied jet aircraft to go into operational service in World War II. The RAF received at least 111 Meteors as they were operated by the service from 1946 up until the early 70s. The aircraft were used as fighters, trainers and remote control targets. Most of the RAF's Meteors were obtained during the Korean War, and the type replaced the Mustangs of 77 Squadron in that conflict. Initial operations with the Meteors proved to be disappointing, as the 77 Squadron pilot soon found that at high altitude it was outclassed by the Russian-designed MiG-15, which was in use by the Communist forces. However, the Meteor was extremely manoeuvrable at low level and was used very effectively in the ground attack role for the duration of the war. A number of the Royal Air Force Meteors were supplied from the United Kingdom to be operated by RAF as targets for missile trials at the Woomera in South Australia. At armament was 4 20mm Hispano cannon and a maximum speed of 590 miles an hour at sea level, a ceiling of 44,000 feet. Here we have the English Electric Canberra, designed in the United Kingdom by the English Electric Company in the ceremony on the 19th of January 1953. The type was named the Canberra by the Australian Prime Minister Sir Robert Menzies. 48 Canberras were constructed in Australia for the Royal Air Force by government aircraft factories at Avalon near Melbourne. The first of these aircraft was delivered by the RAF to the RAF on the 29th of May 53. No. 2 Squadron was heavily involved in bombing operations against the Communist forces in Malaysia. In 67, No. 2 Squadron left its base at Butterworth in Malaysia for its new home in South Vietnam, which was to be its home for the next 5 years. During its stay in Vietnam, the squadron bombers flew 11,696 operational missions and dropped 76,389 bombs. In 1971, the squadron returned to Australia and was based at Amberley. Its aircraft continued its service in the photo reconnaissance role until they retired in 1982. Armament, 6,000 pounds of bombs internally and 2,000 pounds under the wings. Maximum speed 541 mile an hour at 40,000 feet, a ceiling of 48,000 feet. We're looking at a Mirage jet fighter here. I'll just walk over to it and show you roughly the size of it. That's the North American Sabre, designed in the United States by the North American Aviation Company. Went on to one of the most successful Western combat aircraft since the end of the Second World War. The Sabre was produced in large numbers in USA and was also built under licence in Australia, Canada, Italy and Japan. The Australian aircraft was produced by the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation at Fisherman's Bend near Melbourne. These aircraft were heavily modified for the original aircraft so they could take the Rolls-Royce Avon jet engine, which was much more powerful than the original American engine. The Australian aircraft are also fitted with 30mm Ardenne cannon instead of the original half-inch machine guns, and were also later fitted with Sidewinder air-to-air missiles. These modifications made the CAC Sabres the fastest and most heavily armed version of the Sabre to be produced. The Royal Australian Air Force received 102 Sabres and operated them from bases in Australia, Malaysia and Thailand. When the RAF retired its Sabres in the early 70s, a number of their aircraft were refurbished and supplied to the Indonesian and Malaysian Air Force. Armament is two 30mm Ardenne cannons, Sidewinder air-to-air missiles. Speed is maximum 700 miles an hour at sea level. Has a ceiling of 55,000 feet.